Love and attachment often look the same, but there's a fundamental difference between the two. What is it? So in the world we live in today, I've noticed that more and more people don't understand the difference between love and lust. They're learning about relationships from TV. They're learning about it from movies, from social media, from maybe their friends at school or at university. But this topic, love, attachment, lust, this topic is fundamental to your happiness, to your success in relationships. Now, ask anybody who's going through a breakup or anybody who's going through a divorce, the pain that they're going through. So if we can get this right, if we can get the fundamentals right, then it will save us a lot of pain later. So in today's episode, Weekly Wisdom, episode 4, we're going to be exploring, do you have love or do you have lust? And what's the difference between the two? Now today, I'm not going to be discussing so much about relationships per se, so about communication styles and why couples argue. So we'll save those for later episodes. Today I wanted to kind of look at the fundamental building blocks of what makes up a relationship in the first place. And I wanted to combine ancient wisdom with modern day psychology. So we'll be discussing the nature of love, we'll be discussing the nature of lust and attachment, and we'll also be looking at what's the difference between the two. Now, I believe lust is the second most powerful emotion. It has such a power to motivate us and to make us do things. And this is confirmed in an ancient book of wisdom, the Bhagavad Gita. In there, a personality called Arjun, he's asking questions to Krishna. And one of the questions he asks in chapter 3, he asks, what impels a person to act even against their own will? So have you ever had the experience where you're doing something and you know it's wrong, but you can't stop yourself? Like, you want to stop yourself, but you just can't. So for example, it could be something as shall we say, detrimental to your program, to your, let's say, a weight loss program. You're on a diet, you're eating specific foods, and you walk past the shop and you see a slice of cake, you see that chocolate bar, and it's just lust just takes, like that desire just takes over, and you end up doing something, and you know it's completely against what your plan is, what your diet plan is. So Arjun asks, what is it that impels somebody to act even against their own will? And Krishna replies, it is lust only, O Arjun. So this lust can drive us to do things, to act in ways that are detrimental even to our own success, and sometimes detrimental to other people. So for example, if anybody watches murder cases or detective cases, you'll know that the first suspect in a murder case is always who? So it's generally always the spouse. And one of the biggest motives for murder, especially of a spouse, is generally some kind of lust or some offshoot of lust, like control or money or anger. Like that, or obsession. Their spouse is about to leave them and they don't want anybody else to have them. So lust is has a very powerful influence on our consciousness. So let me show you some of the offshoots of lust and how powerful it can be. So when our desires are fulfilled, especially again and again, these can often lead to some of these qualities. So greed, control, obsession, even cheating or objectification. And the underlying, shall we say, principle here is that lust is about our own selfish enjoyment. It's about what is beneficial to us, what gives our senses enjoyment, what gives our mind pleasure, rather than thinking about the other person. And that's the problem. And you can see it in the news, especially today. If you just look, when I read the news, when I used to go to work on the bus, and I used to read the newspapers, and all you'd see is just full of lust and its offshoots. Celebrity scandals, there's wars going on, there's politics based on power and control. So lust is a very motivating, very powerful force on our consciousness. And when that lust doesn't get fulfilled, when our expectations are not met, what does it lead to? That's when it leads to anger, sometimes even violent things. So anger, arguments, fights, madness. And that madness can sometimes even lead to criminality. For example, murder. There was one case that I was following in 2018 in the US. There was a case of a man called Chris Watts. And he had a beautiful wife. She was pregnant. They had two beautiful little girls. And driven by his lust for his mistress, Nicole Kessinger, he ended up murdering, in August 2018, he ended up murdering his wife and murdering his two little kids. I couldn't believe, he explained the story later, and how he suffocated his, I think she was 4 years old at the time, the youngest. I was just thinking, how does a person do that? Somebody that he's brought up and, so sweet, so innocent. So that lust can even drive us to madness and even criminality, where we forget who we are. We forget what is our position with this person. It's just like, I just want to fulfill my own desire, my selfish desire. So that's on one extreme. That's on the other end of the extreme, shall we say. Then on the other side, I believe that love is the most powerful emotion. So there's that expression, love makes the world go round. And love is where we go beyond our selfish needs. And one of the reasons why I feel love is the most powerful emotion is because it drives some of these qualities like compassion, forgiveness. Forgiveness is such a hard thing to do, but when we are, shall we say, coming from a place of love, we can even come to forgiveness. I remember watching one court incident where there was the murderer was was in the defense, and after he had been convicted, the jury convicted him as guilty. Then everybody came and gave their victim statements, and the father of the girl that he murdered. So this person, he was just emotionless. He was just sat there the whole time. People were giving victim statements, and the whole case was going on. There was no emotion on his face. And finally, the father came up on stage, and he gave his victim statement. But then at the end, he said he looked at the murderer of his daughter, and I know how hard this is. And he says, "I forgive you for what you did." And the murderer broke down into tears at the time. Like, he was completely emotionless throughout the whole case, but at that point he just couldn't take it. It's like the love of that father reached him. It was so powerful, reached past his lust into his heart, into his soul. So it's amazing to see. Love is such a powerful emotion. It makes a sacrifice. One of the most selfless and sacrificing group of people that I see are mums, especially with very young babies. They literally give up sleep and everything. They're physical, they're looking good, they have to sacrifice a lot. And for the benefit of the child, waking up every 1 hour or 2 hours sometimes at night time. Only firsthand did I realize what a mother goes through, what a caring mother actually goes through. And in the ancient wisdom, it explains that the closest thing to pure love is that mother's love for that child. That's why love is one of the most powerful emotions. And it brings that selflessness, and it also brings a deep sense of satisfaction, and we'll look at why that is later. But just briefly to say here, pure love comes from that higher divinity, that higher power. And that's also why it's such a powerful emotion. Right? We understand that we are also part of, I mean, some people may not believe in a God or something like that. Let's say the higher intelligence of the universe. So because we are part of that, and that has love in it, that's why we have love. So when we do things from a place of love, that feeds our soul. That's our true self. But when we do things from attachment, that's not feeding the soul, that feeds our false ego. You can see in this picture here, it's like I've given a squiggly, like a jagged edged thing to attachment. It's very different from love. You can see that in society nowadays, more and more people are only feeding and growing their false ego. And unfortunately, we see it with people in positions of power, politicians, leaders of countries. And so many of them are only concerned with votes and their own selfish motives. And as a result, the whole country suffers. And if you're a dad or a mum, then if you're only doing something for your own attachment and your own false ego, then the kids suffer. And of course, if you're a husband or a wife, then your partner suffers. So today is about looking to move back more towards love than towards attachment. How do we do that? Who here is not looking for true love? But then, why does it elude us so much? So let's compare and contrast qualities of love and the quality of lust. So love, for example, is based on a deeper attraction. It's based more on the personality. Whereas lust is purely based on superficial attraction. Now, of course, I often put people together in our community when I see two people who may be a good match for each other. I do matchmaking sometimes. And one of the things that we always get from the guy in general, he says, I have to be attracted to her, which is fine. Okay, so that initial, often people will want that at the beginning of the relationship, there needs to be that superficial attraction. There needs to be something there that, shall we say, brings them together in the first place. Fine. But to make the relationship last, it's not going to be just based on that superficial attraction. Even if it's there just at the beginning, that's fine. But it needs to be based on something deeper than just the physical attraction. Another quality of love is genuine care, whereas lust is superficial care. So in other words, in lust, the person only cares about them when they need something from them. You know, you hate it when you kind of get a message from somebody and it's just like all they ask about is, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do this? Can you do that? When there's no genuine care there, that's not love. And with love, there is actually very little or low expectation. Now, some people say or recommend that there should be zero expectation. But I'm going to say, let's be practical here. Nobody is necessarily a saint. So who's going to have absolutely zero expectation, especially when it's a partner? Of course, there's going to be some expectation, but that expectation is very low. Whereas when somebody is very much in lust in terms of their own, shall we say, selfish needs, they have very high expectations on the other person. And we'll look at to some level on a, shall we say, a deeper level, why that is the case in a little while. For somebody who's sharing love in their relationship, their motivation is pure. So what do we mean by that? It means that they actually they are doing whatever they're doing for the benefit of the other person. Whereas lust, which can often look the same, as I was saying at the beginning, love and lust often look the same, but actually the motivation is selfish. And that comes out later. And then love is more of a long-term relationship, and lust is about fleeting emotions. You know, that initial honeymoon period, and then the person just gets bored and wants to leave the relationship. Love is also selfless, and of course, lust is selfish. It's all about our own needs. In love, there is a lot of giving. Of course, there is giving and receiving in any relationship. Well, there should be. But the focus of a person in love is that they want to give. But the focus of somebody in lust is they want to receive. They just want to take. And again, along the same line of selfless and giving, is that they want to serve them. They want to benefit that other person, whereas somebody in lust wants to benefit themselves. And finally, one last quality here of love is it's unconditional. There are no conditions. They love that person no matter what they do. And I saw this in one movie where it was a comedy movie, and the son had been wrongly accused of something, and he was going to go to jail. And the parents came and visited him, and they sat him down and they said, "Listen, son, it doesn't matter what you've done. Even if you go to prison, we will still love you." So a parent's love for their child is often, that's like the closest thing to unconditional love that there is. And of course, in lust, it is full of conditions. As long as you do this and you do that, and you cook and clean, or you're earning £1 million a year or whatever it is, then I'll love you. Then I'll look after you. Then I'll do whatever it is that you want me to do. So full of conditions. So what kind of relationships do we have? So the idea of this session is to begin now to look at that, and to at least attempt to shift more towards love, more towards the soul, rather than to the false ego. So if we've looked at those qualities of the nature, shall we say, of love, the nature of lust. If you were to describe it, if you were to capture the difference in one word, what would you say is? So maybe you can say in the chat, if you were to describe the difference in one word, what would that be? So even if you're watching this on replay, press pause and write in the chat, what would you say is the difference? So I would say, in one word, it's about the intention. The intention with which you're doing whatever it is you're doing determines whether that thing is love or whether that thing is lust, whether that thing is attachment. What's the deeper reason why? As I was saying, they often look the same. So for example, on Valentine's Day, let's say, or anniversary, something like that, two sets of couples will go out to the restaurant with their partner, and it might even be an expensive meal, and they're having a great time with each other. So if we look at both of those sets of couples, it seems like it's exactly the same thing is going on. So how do we define one as love and one as lust? Will be based on their intention. So I'm going to focus on the guy in this particular case. So let's say, you can look at this picture here. You can see that even though he's smiling and talking to his partner, and they're holding hands, and maybe they're having a lovely conversation, in the back of his mind, the reason why he's doing this, the reason why he's, shall we say, whining and dining her, is because he's looking forward to what's going to happen, what he thinks is going to happen later. So he's focusing not on how to make her happy, actually. His focus, his internal, deeper intention is actually for his own selfish enjoyment, for his own sensual enjoyment. Whereas when you take the other couple, and in this case, the guy, his intention is purely to make his partner happy. No strings attached. Whether something happens later or not, that's not the point. That's not the reason why he's doing it. The reason why he's just being in that moment. Put his phone away. He's enjoying being with her, and he's focused on her. He's focused on her smile, cracking jokes, and they are having such an amazing time. No strings attached. That's the difference. So the first tip, shall we say, to developing more love rather than lust is actually ask, what's your intention behind it? Why am I actually doing this? And what I'd like to say is, love is wholesome. Attachment or lust is troublesome. And the second thing I'd like to say about, especially about love not a noun, it's a verb. This is a proverb I heard many years ago, and I didn't understand it at first. What does it mean, love is not a noun? Actually, in one sense, love is both a noun and it's a verb. But the point here is the emphasis is that it's a doing word. It's something that you do rather than something that you just feel. So sometimes somebody will say, "Oh, I have so much love," and then it's like, okay, what did you do for that person? Nothing. So just having that feeling isn't love. It's about what you do. Now, of course, I want to just put a caveat here. If another person is abusive or neglectful, that's different. So when we're talking about our intention and doing good things and loving the other person, doing things to help that other person, of course, we're talking about, once it's a healthy relationship. So have a look at this picture here. You can see this guy is sitting with his beer, watching the football, and his wife has just come home and she's so tired. She's carrying all these heavy bags of shopping, and he's sitting there just enjoying the football. And let's say he's drank more of that beer by the time she comes home, and he sees her and he says, "Oh, hi darling, I love you. Can you just get me some more beer out of the fridge while I'm watching the match?" So you see the point. The point here is that love is not a noun. It's not, "Oh, I love you." In other words, I feel love for you, but instead of actually doing something about it, he's not noticed that she's just coming with all the heavy bags of shopping, and he's just sitting and chilling there, and she's getting upset with him. I'm sorry if I brought up any memories to any of the wives who are watching this. What love really means is for him to put his beer down, to, especially if he's I don't know, watching streaming it or something, and you've got a pause button, just pause it, and then go and help the wife. Instead of asking her to go get another beer out the fridge and fill up, or a cup of tea or something like that, is instead to go and help her to do so. If he actually loves her, he would get up and help with the shopping, put it away and help her, maybe get her a cup of tea and sit her down, and then maybe carry on watching the football. But the point is, if the person is saying "I love you," that means do something about it. It's not just a feeling, it's not just a noun. Do something about it. So again, it comes back to your intention. I often make fun of the Bollywood films. So this is the movie industry in India, and many of you who have seen Bollywood films, you'll kind of know what I'm talking about here. They used to, at least, they've changed a little bit now, but they used to have a real focus on this like using the word love so cheaply. It's like you get the lead actress and she's like, "Oh Raj, I love you," and then you get the this muscular the male lead, and he's like, "Oh Pinky, I love you too." And it's just like, it's so they use this word love so cheaply. No, love means you do something for that person. Even on the playground, I remember at school, people used to just throw around this love word so cheaply. It's actually a very deep thing. Sorry, one moment. Just plug the laptop charger. Love is not a noun, it's a verb. And as I was saying, so what we are looking to do is to shift from the focus of love away from attachment and ego and more towards the soul, actually feeding the soul. When somebody genuinely wants to serve and benefit the other person, when the intention is to benefit the other person, that's what shifts it from selfish or lust or attachment to actually love. And when we act from the soul platform as a side effect, it's not the reason why we do it. Again, I think there was in the sitcom Friends, the American sitcom Friends, there was one episode where it's like, is there any act that is truly selfless? So you could even say here, to have the right intention so that you feel better. No, as a side effect, is that because you're doing, your soul kind of feels nourished. As a side effect, you'll feel more content and satisfied. But even then, that shouldn't be the reason why you're doing it. You'll just note it. That's just a, shall we say, a symptom that what you're doing is going in the right direction. It's good for you. Right? So rather than feeding your false ego, you're feeding your soul. You're nourishing your soul, nourishing the real self. Now, in order to be able to do that, in order to be able to give love more in our relationships, there's a very fundamental principle. And that is, we have to fill our own emotional cup first. What I'm seeing more and more in society is that people are not filling their own cup. They're coming empty and they're begging other people to fill their own cup. No, we've got it wrong. We have to take care of our own emotional cup first. Because if we are on empty, how are we going to give love? So for example, let me use the example of a bank account. It's like when you have £1,000, £10,000, £100,000, can you then give in charity? Are you more likely to be able to give in charity? Yes. You give it, even if you got, I don't know, £10,000 or £100,000 in your bank. Giving £1,000 is not a big deal. But if you're in overdraft and you're minus 1,000 or minus 2,000, is it at that time that you want to give in charity? Of course not. At that time, when you're minus 1,000 or in overdraft or whatever it is, you want to get money as much as possible. So you're not in a position to be able to give. And too many of us in society are coming to our relationships empty, demanding, expecting the other person has to fill my cup. And one of the category of clients that I always make this point to are mums, because mums have this tendency to give and give and give. And I often ask them, do you go through this cycle where you give and you give and you give and you give unconditionally, and you love giving, especially at the beginning, you love giving, but then eventually you get to the point where you just lose the plot? You just completely lose your temper. You're shouting at everybody. You're just like, like that. And then once you kind of reset, maybe there's some regret there and some conversations happen, and maybe the husband says, yeah, I'll do a bit more like that. And then gradually you're giving again. And then eventually you get to the same position again where you just lose the plot. And again, do you go through that cycle often? And pretty much every time the mum goes, yes, Nij, that's exactly what happens. So the reason why is because you need to spend time filling your own cup. I'll say this to anybody who is giving love in whatever capacity it is, whether it's to your parents, whether it's to your partner, whether it's to your siblings, whether it's to your kids, like that. Even if you're a nurse or a doctor or you're in some kind of healing profession, for sure you are giving some of your energy. So you need to fill your emotional cup as well. And often this is actually one of the reasons why mums sometimes come to me and come and have one-to-one sessions, is because then I help them get back on track. I help them, shall we say, fill their emotional cup. We use guided meditation or hypnotherapy to actually rejuvenate them and fill this emotional cup back up. You can see in this picture here, and it's like recharging the batteries, filling that cup so that you can then give love again. If we don't do that, where is that love going to come from? We can't run on empty. So it's very important to do that. Now, in relationships, and this is one of the reasons why couples fight so much, is that too many of us are coming to the relationship empty. So when we come into the relationship and we're demanding that the other person should fill my cup. Now, what happens when they end up doing that? So they end up filling your cup. So you feel better, good, but now your partner's on empty. And this is a problem. Because what happens is then your partner will start to resent you. And as they become empty, then they start to demand that you give to them. And then you end up getting drained. And then this battle keeps going on where it's like, no, you need to give to me. No, you need to give to me. And so many arguments. And I do mediation with couples and partners like that, and so many times it's like that. The arguments are around this whole principle that he's not doing enough, she's not giving to me, he's not giving to me, like this, and they're just going back and forth like that. So then obviously I have to break it down and explain what's actually going on. So this doesn't work. And sometimes you might find your partner will just give a little bit. So and after giving that little bit, they're just like, okay, enough. I'm not giving anymore. So neither you, so you're not satisfied, and now that partner, because he or she had to give some, is also resentful of you. So this way of getting, kind of getting it from somebody else, this is called emotional dependency. So this is not a good model to live your relationships by. So instead, what we want to do is we want to develop what's called codependency. So we learn to fill our own cup, and if our partner also wants to give, great. It's not that. So sometimes people go to the other extreme where they say, like, oh, okay, so rather than emotional dependency, that's it, I'm just going to be emotionally independent. So it's almost like they cut themselves off from that other person. No, we're not saying that either. We're not saying, okay, you know what, I'm just better to be single. I see this in comments on social media so much, like, you know, the relationship difficulties, and then the person is like, oh, better to stay single, you know, oh, this is why I'm single, because, you know, blah, 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 blah. We're not saying to go to the other extreme where it's like you cut yourself off from actually having relationships are great. Getting from other people is great, but it's just we're not dependent on them. So this is called codependency. So instead what we do is we want to fill our own cup up from ourselves. And we also receive from others, but we're not dependent on others. That's the key difference. We're open to receiving from others. We love having good relationships with others, loving relationships with others, but we're not dependent on them. That's the sweet spot. Because here's the thing, when you depend on someone else for your foundational love and they don't give it, what happens? You end up collapsing emotionally, right? Because you can't have a vacuum. So you end up developing some sort of coping mechanism. And this is where it comes back to the diagram that I showed you earlier, where if we don't get our desires fulfilled, it can lead to this anger, arguments, fights, madness, and even end up in criminality. And sometimes because of emotional dependency, sometimes people get even obsessed with the other person. They can't live without them. There is a term called limerence. It's like you're totally dependent on the person is, because of the void in their heart, because they're not receiving love, then what happens is the person develops a fantasy love with that person. Sometimes it's even a celebrity, or maybe they've just met them once or twice. There's no reciprocation necessary from the other person, but they're living in this fantasy because they've had some, I don't know, a smile from them or something, or they've imagined something, and they're just totally obsessed with that other person. They sleep, when they're going to sleep, they're thinking about them. When they wake up in the morning, they're thinking about them. And there's no reciprocation. So this is because there is a void. There is a they're empty emotionally. And so how are you going to get that love? So you fantasize, and you're in that you're in that relationship with that person. So it's kind of like you're filling your cup that way. So this is a very dangerous situation to be in. Sometimes people end up cheating on their partner, looking for that emotional validation from outside, getting that approval, appreciation, love, acceptance, etc., externally from somebody else. And so this goes back to that we have to learn to fill our own cup. So we're not dependent on others, but like I said, we're codependent. So if they want to give, we accept. So there are many ways to fill your own cup. In order to be able to do this, you need to understand yourself. So just like love. So if you take love itself, how do you know how to love another person? So you have to understand what their desires are, what their needs are. You have to understand what their likes and dislikes are. So there's a book by I think his name is John Chapman, and he's written this book called The 5 Love Languages. So you can look that up. There's 5. I do it with the acronym QAPPA. So Q stands for quality time, A stands for appreciation, P stands for physical touch, the next P stands for presence, and A stands for acts of service. QAPPA. So there are different ways in which people receive love. So just as we need to understand that for others, if we want to love somebody, understand what their love language is, and then do what is beneficial. What is it that makes them feel loved? So for example, one person in my family, when she was a young girl, whenever we would take her shopping, she would always ask to buy something. So we would always say no, because you can't just keep buying whatever you want. But then later I understood that her love language was presence. So by buying something for her, she would see that as an act of love. And if I had said no, that was almost like an act of feeling not loved. Like it's that strong. It's not just, okay, we didn't buy something. It's not as simple as that. It's actually, it had a really deep, significant impact on her. So once I understood that, every time we would go shopping, we'd just buy like a £1 sweet or a chocolate or something like that. And in this way, we would satisfy her, shall we say, her love language. So it's really important. So if we want to love somebody, is understand what is it that makes them tick? What is it that makes them feel loved? And then on the other end of the scale, shall we say, about filling our own emotional cup, we also need to understand that for ourselves. What is it, in what way can I fill my own emotional cup so that I'm happy, so that I feel loved, and in this way I can give more love to others. I had one mum who was in a very difficult situation with her 2 kids and her husband, and her father-in-law, and just giving and giving and giving, and her siblings weren't able to help with looking after her father like this. So she was just totally like swamped. So she came to me and I really worked on her, and we discovered what it is that would make her, what it is that would help her to fill her own emotional cup. I'm really happy to say. So I just spoke to her 2 days ago, and she was saying how she's found a part-time job that she's doing, and that job is exactly in line with what we were discussing, like what would help her to fill her own emotional cup. So I helped her to use the power of manifestation, and attracted it. And now she has a mechanism. So 3 days a week, she's working part-time, and she is filling her own cup now, which makes her totally different. It makes her life totally different from just giving without recharging. She came to me just almost like tearing her hair out. Now she's found a way to fill her own emotional cup. She's much more able to now give to everybody else in our family. So that's really important. We charge our own batteries, and then we can give to others. We can genuinely give rather than in a mood of lust. We might even still be giving, but we're doing it the mood is very much resentful even when doing it, because we're running on empty. So developing emotional codependence, very important. And what I'll say is, when you give from a place of love, from a place of genuine love, in other words, when you're full up and you give in that way, naturally people will reciprocate with you. They'll give you love back. They like to be in your association. It's a really amazing position to be in. And what you'll find is, even if people don't give back to you, that's okay, because you never depended on their love anyway. Like that. So one of the ways in which, not one of the ways, so there are many ways in which you can give love to yourself. So I've got this acronym, I use this acronym GAMES. If you want to find out more about how to fill your own emotional cup, so I have an online course called Heartbreak to Heartfelt, and that course goes through in detail. Don't have time here. It's like a 2-hour workshop. It really goes through all the kind of nuances. It teaches you the model of how to go from emotional dependency to emotional codependence. You go through that model, you understand how that works, how you change your expectations to those people that you've got in your foundation. And then using the acronym GAMES, how to fill your own emotional cup. And it's really important that if you want to be good at relationships, if you want to be have an actual loving relationship, even attracting the right person in the first place, we need to be full in ourselves. We need to have a good relationship with ourselves first before we can give to others. So to really shift from, shall we say, lustful relationships, not in the purest sense, but just in terms of we're always looking to gain from other people in whichever way it is, and moving more towards a loving relationship means giving to yourself first, and then you can genuinely, because you don't need anything from that other person, then you can genuinely give like that. So if you want to know more about that workshop, that online workshop, you can go to www.nijdey.com/heartbreak to heartfelt, and all the details of that workshop is there. And I'm also giving some freebies. So we're giving every weekly wisdom, every episode we have a PDF. So it's like a summary PDF. And if you sign up to www.nijdey.com/events, you'll see that if you add your email address, you can create a library in my using my library there, and you'll get access to the PDFs there as well. And what I'll also ask is, if you have any questions or you want to contact me directly, you'll see in the links below, you'll see a way to contact me using the website, or you can write something in the chat and I'll get back to you. So if you enjoyed today's session, I hope you enjoyed it. Please give this video a like. Really appreciate that. And also share what you took away from this session. Share it in the comments below. Now, for those of you who are live, if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask in the chat and we can discuss. And while you're writing in the chat, I'll just read some of the comments from the live. There's no such thing as selfless in lust. Everything has a price or expectation attached to it. There's a few comments about some of the old Bollywood movies there. Yeah, the old movies make me laugh, how people fall in love at first sight or after 2 interactions. What I noticed, the classic way in which 2 people would fall in love, especially they would do it when they were young, maybe at college or university. So they'd be walking by, and it's typically the female lead would be holding her books like that, because that's what people do. And then somehow they would bump into bump into each other, and of course she would knock all her books down. So they both kneel down to then pick up the books, and of course that's when their eyes meet, and then they have this this interaction, and she's smiling shyly, and he's just looking at her like and trying to chat her up, and he's helping her, pick up the things like that. So it's like so cheesy. But the reason why those movies are often so successful is because, of course, that's the fantasy that we're all looking for. We all want that. The soul wants unconditional love. So when we don't get it, shall we say, in the real world, then we look to the fantasy world to get it. So many books are there that that have stories like this. So we all want it. If one emotional cup is empty for a long time, how to start building up that cup without relying on friends and other relationships. So, as I was saying, what you need to understand is, what is it for you that will help you fill your emotional cup? Everybody's individual. So I can't say a generic thing here, because we have to look at specifically for you, what is it that lights you up? What is it that makes you feel nourished? See, for somebody it might be going for a jog. Somebody else it might be going for a walk in the park. Whatever it is for you, and that's what you need to understand. And you need to spend some time getting off your phone. Definitely say that. The phones are mobile phones, such a big distraction. So get off your phone and actually spend some time with yourself, understanding yourself. Now, sometimes, like I said, people will get in touch with me. We'll have a one-to-one session where we'll understand. We'll go through. I'll ask certain questions, and in that way, I can help you to understand what it is. And we go through the acronym games, and you can understand out of those which ones are suitable for you, which ones are the ones that energize you, like that. So it's about you understanding yourself, you having that relationship with yourself. It's like, how do you understand what somebody else, what is it that they love? You have to have those conversations. And so it's a similar thing. It's almost like having a conversation with yourself about what it is that nourishes you, or have a conversation with a friend or something like that and have that discussion. But the point is, it's about you understanding you. Okay, thank you for the opportunity. How to control romantic emotion if you know you're not going to get from the person you once were looking from. So this is especially true if, for example, let me give you the typical scenario where somebody is very, where somebody kind of grew up with this idea that, or this expectation that when I get married, my partner's going to be like this, and he or she, well, let's say he, excuse me, if it's a female, then he's going to sweep me off my feet. My Prince Charming is going to come, and he's going to be so romantic, and he's going to, I don't know, he's going to buy me flowers every day or whatever it is. Like, we have this, this almost like fantasy expectation of what marriage or being in a relationship is going to be like. And then, of course, we get married and we feel the lack in that relationship, and especially if the person is very opposite, maybe they're not even romantic at all. That's really tough, because if you think about it, so many years that person has spent almost like contemplating, almost like meditating on, the marriage is going to be like this, and it's going to be like this, and it's going to be like this, and then all of a sudden, bam, it's like everything just gets shaken, which is really horrible. So it's kind of going like, this is your expectation, and then you're so far away from your expectation. So that's why one of the first things is to redesign the psychological model in your head so that you are not dependent on those other people for those things. And now what happens if you still need it? So that's often where we have to do shall we say, an analysis, and we look deeper what happened in childhood. Maybe there were certain things that were lacking, so it created a void in the heart, and if there is a void in the heart, then we need to address that void. So let me just say it like this. This is all explained in this course here, this online course, Heartbreak to Heartfelt. So when you, especially in childhood, what we're looking for, especially from our mom, now of course this is both parents, but especially the mom, is we're looking for unconditional love. And then from the father, we're especially looking for approval and so many other things. Now, what happens is when we don't get those things for whatever reason, or not in a satisfactory way, it leaves a void. It leaves a vacuum in the heart, shall we say, or in that particular area. So the approval is part of the ego, and unconditional love is part of the soul. These are needs. They're not luxuries. These are absolute needs. And so when we don't get those things, it creates a void. Now we will have to find another source for those things. And the problem is, if we're finding sources for those things which are negative, for example, you go outside of your relationship, you go outside of your marriage or relationship or whatever it is. And that's what's happening. You see that all the time in society. People are not getting their shall we say, the void fulfilled by their partner, so they go outside. But the point is, we shouldn't even be trying to get our void fulfilled by a partner in the first place. The void needs to be filled from us. We can spend our whole life getting it even from other people. Even people will have affairs and they'll try and get it from that other person, and then, I don't know, their marriage breaks or something like that, and then they'll get together with the person they're having an affair, and they still won't be able to, because if there's a psychological issue, internal issue, it's not going to be resolved by something external. The psychological issue, the void in the heart, there's only one person that can fill that void. Two, shall we say, if you believe in the higher power. The higher power and yourself. That's it. No external person is going to be able to fill that void. So it has to come from within us. And like I said, if you go to this online course here, you'll get the full workshop. It talks about that in detail. I spend maybe 1 or 2 hours talking about just this point fully. Hope that helps. Mother's unconditional love for her children versus father's pragmatic approach. Please discuss. Okay, so as I was briefly saying there, the child needs unconditional love. Sorry, not just the child, it's actually the soul. The need of the soul is unconditional love. So just like, what is the fundamental need of the physical body? Like, if you don't have that, like, okay, water, food, okay, but there's one fundamental need which if you don't have, say, in 2 minutes, every 2 minutes, you'll die. Like, it's that fundamental. What is that? There's air. So oxygen is like the absolute fundamental need of the body. Without oxygen, we die. And similarly, for the soul, the fundamental need of the soul is unconditional love. Actually, it's that acceptance, that feeling of just, you know what, you can just be you. And it especially looks, the child especially looks for the mother, to the mother, for that unconditional love. And what happens when it doesn't get it? Uh-oh, big trouble. And then, especially from the father, what we're looking for is this, father's pragmatic approach, as you said, is looking for approval, looking for validation, looking for, oh, I'm proud of you, son, or I'm proud of you, my dear daughter. Like, especially looking for those. So that's the need of the ego to, shall we say, have a healthy self-esteem, a healthy self-image. So on one hand is unconditional love, that's of the soul. But the ego has different needs. So the ego needs to hear those words of approval and validation, etc. So as a child, we especially look for the father for those things. And often what happens is, especially in South Asian families or migrant families, you'll find is their parents are so heavy. Often they don't give unconditional love, and they don't give approval. It's a very difficult situation. This is generational trauma because their parents didn't do it, and their grandparents did it to their parents like that, and so generational trauma has gone on like that. So we have to break the cycle. So if you have kids, make sure you're giving those things. Now, if you didn't receive those things as a child, what do you do? So this is where we use visualization, we use inner child healing, where we kind of go back to the past and we heal that void that's there. So I do this in my one-to-one sessions. Like I said, this course, it talks about that in more detail. But we need those things. Those things are fundamental to our foundational well-being as a child. And then we grow up healthy. We grow up with a healthy self-esteem. We grow up having a full emotional cup, shall we say, and therefore we have healthy relationships. The problem comes when, so many people, unfortunately, nowadays are coming from broken families, or their emotional cup is practically zero. So of course, they're going to look for it from other people, and then they're just disappointed and disappointed and disappointed and disappointed, and you spend your whole life suffering. Spend your whole life looking for something externally, and it was never there to be found in the first place. It's like there's that story where a person is and there's a famous story of a king with his minister, and they were walking at night time. They were just kind of examining the kingdom, but incognito. And they saw this one man who was looking for a key, lost his keys. He was looking for it under the tree. And so they asked him, like, "Oh, what are you looking for?" He said, "Oh, I'm looking for my keys." Like, "Oh, what happened? Where might you have dropped it?" And he said, "Oh, I think I may have dropped it somewhere over in that direction." So they said, "Why are you looking for it over here?" So, there's more light over here. It's like, you're never going to find it. That's the point. You're never going to find that thing that will fill the void externally. It has to come from within you. So when we are more wholesome, then we can come into the relationships and have much better relationships with each other. The community, the society can be stronger. I wish politicians would hear that, leaders of society, if they are wholesome, they are not lustful, shall we say. They're not thinking about their own selfish motives. They're wholesome and whole, and they genuinely think about the well-being of their citizens, of the country. It will change everything. But, as they say, charity starts at home. We have to start with ourselves. We have to do this first, and hopefully gradually we can spread this knowledge. So yes, please spread this knowledge. Just a general question: if a person is going through a limerence, I assume you're saying, can it be something from a past life, soul recognition, or connection? Generally, if it's something from a past life connection, you would definitely have strong feelings. Yes, that's possible. Limerence is more to do with where it's almost like you don't have control. It's more to do with obsession rather than love or strong feelings or connection with that person. It's like, because there is a void, because there's a vacuum in the heart, now we've identified somebody in the fantasy, somebody who can go in that. So that's the problem. So if it is a soul connection, one of the ways in which you can, shall we say, can understand whether it's love or lust is you ask yourself the question, can I let that person go? And when there's genuine love, you can say, yes, I'll let that person go, be independent, etc. Limerence isn't like that. Limerence is like totally like that person is filling my void. That's what the problem is. So I'd say no. Generally no. Okay, thank you so much for the questions, and thank you so much for your kind attention. And in the next Weekly Wisdom, episode 5, we'll be discussing why couples fight so much. So I'm going to kind of move into the theme of relationships, but I think because there are so many questions and so many things that people want to know even about this topic, I may go deeper about the void at some point, so watch out for that. Thank you very much. I will hopefully see you in the next one. And like I said, please like and share this video, and let's spread this knowledge. Like I said, the politicians and people in society in general really need to hear this message. Love, not attachment. Okay, thank you very much. Take care.